When the criminals arrive, the private team opens fire at them and overpowers them with their heavy-duty weapons. The film opens with a senior pilot named Brodie Torrance, who calls his daughter on his way to fly his next plane. He gets to know his co-pilot, Deal, who informs him about the bad weather. When the weatherman comes to update them about flying 14 passengers only, he brings the weather issue to him, but he makes it sound irrelevant and tells them not to worry. Shortly after, the chief, Bonnie, introduces herself to the pilots and requires Brodie's presence in the plane's jetway. There, he meets an officer who's boarding a high-end criminal named Louis on today's flight due to an emergency, and makes sure Brodie remains mindful of him even though he'll be restrained and guarded. Brodie agrees to take on this responsibility and gets to know the air hostesses. The passengers board the plane, and Brodie takes off immediately. When they reach the elevation point, the weather starts worsening. Brodie notifies the passengers to put their seatbelts on. He also tries to contact the airport, but poor radio signals cut off his communication. Sometime later, their plane is struck by a lightning bolt. When he comes to check up on the passengers, another lightning bolt hits the plane, causing the electricity to run down. Brodie also hits his head against the luggage compartment while returning to the cockpit. He decides to crash-land the plane before it shuts down. While Delo looks for paper maps to navigate their path, the plane starts going down. A lady passenger and Lewis's officer unbuckle their seatbelts, due to which they hit their heads against the ceiling and die. Brodie stabilizes the plane midair and prepares for a ditch.
Southwest Manila. Heading south, 0. That's 119. Descending over 40,000 feet. No radar, no navigation.
In the dark, Bonnie quickly demonstrates to the passengers and prepares them for a crash landing. Brodie sees an island and lands there.
See that? Over there? That's fucking land. Feet dry.
While they get off the plane, the airline owner sets up a meeting to find their plane that's off their grid now. The next morning, Brodie rounds up the passengers to answer their ambiguities. He promises them to fix the plane using the leftover electricity. Until then, he asks them to explore and rest. Back at the airport meeting, the airline owner, Terry Hampton, recruits a rescue expert named Scarsdale to locate his missing plane. Next, Brodie helps the passengers set up a temporary shelter and asks them to share their food. When he goes to the plane's technical room, he finds the fuse blown, the radio scrambled, and the transponders shot. Bonnie asks for his assistance with the dead bodies in the plane. Brodie goes inside the plane and collects their personal items. He takes Lewis's officer's gun and Lewis's handcuff keys. Outside, one of the passengers starts filming everyone and frustratingly shares his experience. Brodie returns to Dele and uses the map to figure out where they are currently. Dele brings to his attention that they are on a private island called Jolo, which is run by separatists and criminals. He thinks it's unsafe here, so he asks to solve the radio issue first. Brodie and Dale hear some commotion coming from the passengers. They run towards them and find Lewis attacking the man who tried to film him, among other passengers. In the airport, Scarsdale forces Terry to inform the press about this. When Terry hesitates, he accuses him of hiding something and starts schooling the weatherman, whom he blames for everything. Whereas he starts getting out every single detail of the plane, Brodie packs up some necessary items and tells Dealey he's going to uncuff Louis and take him along with him. He then confronts the passengers about going to the other end of the island to find radio signals so he can contact the airport and have a rescue team arranged for them. Feeling safer with Lewis around, Brodie uncuffs him and walks away with him. We finally witness the rogue criminals who live by their own rules, under one leader, Datu Junmar. His informant approaches him with a hot tip about the plane landing on their island with international passengers and gives their location to Datu in exchange for money. Datu plans on looting them, so he tells his men to gear up. Terry officially confronts the media about the missing flight. Brodie's wife and daughter watch the news and get worry-sick for him. Meanwhile, Brodie is seen strolling through the woods with Louis. Louis is curious to know why Brodie selected him out of all the passengers. Brodie discloses that he needed someone tough with him, in case they came across the rogue criminals of this island. Midst their conversation, Louis vanishes and leaves Brodie alone.
You have 10 seconds to get more snacks and like the video. You shouldn't play with terror.
Subsequently, Scarsdale learns about Brodie's flight routes and asks the airport people why he started taking third-tier flights after 20 years of a perfect career. He's then shown a video in which Brodie wrestles a cranky and abusive passenger whom he knocks out. Ever since this incident, he's stopped taking on bigger flights. Simultaneously, Deal discovers something fixable in the plane's technical compartment, while Brodie comes across an abandoned storage unit. He discovers a scrambled radio there, so he starts fixing the wires. Consequently, Scarsdale calls the rescue team head and keeps his team on retainer until he locates Brodie and the missing plane. Brodie succeeds in calling the airport helpline and addressing the issue, but the operator on the other end is unable to hear his voice. Disappointed, he calls his daughter and tells her the entire scenario. He has her write all the coordinates and sends her to the airport to follow his instructions. Suddenly, he gets jumped by a criminal from behind. He gets badly beaten up, but in the end, he knocks out the bad guy. He hears someone approaching the place, so he hides. Fortunately, it turns out to be Louis, who has equipped himself with weapons by now. When he finds Brodie, he gives a gun to him as well, and sticks by his side. Elsewhere, Datu's informant comes to him with fresh updates. Brodie and Louis head downstairs and find a camera, which contains the videos of the innocent people who are taken hostage upon stepping into the island. The criminals then film them and blackmail their families for ransom money. Brodie realizes his passengers are in grave danger, so he returns to them in a truck they just found. Meanwhile, the passengers look at vehicles in the distance and wave at them, assuming it's Brodie with the help. It turns out they've lured the criminals towards them, who open fire to terrorize them. Brodie and Louis hear the fire and become alert. Datu and his men begin asking the passengers where their captain is. Louis makes Brodie hide in the bushes to plan their move. In the meantime, they force Bonnie to give them the passengers' list. A woman passenger tries running away from there, but they instantly shoot her, which spreads their fear across the passengers. Another passenger, perhaps the shot woman's son or relative, starts screaming, so they begin beating him up. Brodie aches, seeing his passengers get tortured, but Louis holds him back since it's not safe out there. Datu and his army take the passengers hostage and load them in their vans. Before leaving with them, he appoints 2 of his men to search the plane for resourceful items. In the bushes, Brodie fights with Louis for not letting him go, but he tries to explain they were outnumbered by the army and couldn't afford to face them. Setting aside their personal fight, they go after the 2 criminals who are searching the plane. They take them under their gunpoint and make them spill that the passengers are being taken to the empty factory. On Scarsdale's side, he finds out about the mysterious call from Jolo Island. Assured that it was Brodie, he requests Terry the access to a satellite to locate their plane and people. Back on the island, Brodie finds out that Delia has fixed the navigation system, which he uses to figure out the route to the factory, though he becomes concerned when he watches Louis take the captured bad guys in the woods and shoot them. The 2 team up soon and drive to rescue their people. Meanwhile, Scarsdale finds out the exact location of the plane with the satellite's help. Terry suggests involving the Philippine government to rescue their people, but Scarsdale enlightens them with the rogue criminal rule there and orders Terry to send out a personal team, as well as the rescue team, since the island is a dangerous place. While Brodie and Louis reach the factory and witness the criminals forcefully making ransom videos of their passengers.
Hey, stop! What are you doing? Hey, stop! Oh! Name! Country! Maxwell Carver,
Name,
England.
country. Name, country.
Matt! Sinclair American!
Terry's private team reaches the plane and reports to Terry about the dead bodies. They also come across the coordinates of the factory, which Brodie left for them. Brodie and Louis secretly monitor the criminals guarding the place and choke 2 to death. They move forward and eye all the guards. Since they can't lure attention by using guns, Louis picks up a sledgehammer and kills the criminals on his way to the room where all the passengers are locked up. Brodie frees them and takes them back to the bus and tells them the rescue team will be arriving any minute. Louis breaks the bad news there and tells Brodie the criminals are lining up outside. Brodie tells Louis to safely take the passengers back to the plane while he stays behind to distract the criminals. When he faces the criminals head-on, they start beating him up.
I had to speak to John Marr.
Luckily, the private team opens fire and shoots most of the criminals. They rescue Brodie from there and flee. Datu's brother dies during this, so he takes it personally and sends his men to finish Brodie and the others. The private team burst Brodie's bubble by telling him they're not the rescue team and are only sent to secure them. Brodie gets to talk to his worried daughter and feels relieved. He now comes up with a new idea, which the private team updates to Terry. They get back to the plane. He unites with the passengers and decides to fly the plane somewhere safer. Bonnie loads the passengers while Brodie and the private team leader fix the plane. When the criminals arrive, the private team opens fire at them and overpowers them with their heavy-duty weapons. Brodie fixes the plane and greets Louis before getting back on the plane. Louis runs out of ammo at one point and reaches the private team's bag to find more. Instead, he discovers a bag full of cash. He ignores it for now and takes out more ammo to defend the plane. Once Brodie starts the plane and gets ready to take off, the private team gets in the plane too. Terry assists them with the navigation. Louis, however, doesn't get on the plane and runs away with the cash bag. The criminals keep firing at the plane. Datu takes out a rocket launcher to shoot the plane, but Louis spots him and shoots him. Brodie feels proud of Louis and flies the plane away from there. Unfortunately, one of their engines explodes. Terry helps them this time by telling them of an airport nearby. Brodie makes another crash landing there and saves everyone. The rescue team arrives simultaneously and takes away all the passengers. Left behind, Brodie calls his daughter for an update. Here, the film ends. Do you think Louis was morally corrupt for running away with the cash to start a new life instead of turning himself back to the prison?
Like, share with friends, and subscribe to Free Terror TV.